we were the only two people there who had Canadian passports.
Yes.
And then everybody had like, US passport, they have like Australian passports and all kinds. And it's like, so we asked them, like, where you from? Like, we talk. Like Filipinos, they're very friendly.
Yes.
And so we asked them and they said, oh, from the US, I'm from Texas and all kinds, right? And then we said like, oh, okay, so we are the only two people like from Canada.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in Mississauga, Ontario. Well, we solved one China crisis a week ago in terms of the two Michaels finally coming back to Canadian soil after more than 1,000 days being detained for no reason in China. But if you think that's the only China crisis that's out there, you would be wrong. Just wait till you hear the story of Liberty and Marcie Blando and how they were treated as they attempted to get to the Philippines recently. Okay, so Liberty, as I mentioned, you and your sister Marcie, you're going on a flight back to the Philippines. Your 91-year-old mother is there, who is also a Canadian citizen, and she needs assistance traveling, and you're flying to Manila, but there's a stopover in Hong Kong, and then what happens to you?
Well, on our way back there, our first of all, we have 19 and a half hours stopover in Hong Kong. So think about that. So we just sit there, like, relax because we didn't know what was happening. And then before, like at noon on the 15th of September, they told us, it's like, come over, we will print your boarding passes. So we went over because now, like, they said that they have to reprint our boarding passes. So we handed them our boarding passes. So then I said, okay, where's our boarding pass? They said, it's ours now.
Oh, what do they mean by that?
I don't know, but that's what they said.
Okay.
So anyway, I said, what do you mean? I said, that's my boarding pass, my property, and that's what's printed in Canada. And they said, no, this is now Hong Kong property.
And this is very interesting because it should be pointed out, Marcie, that as you mentioned off camera, it was a Hong Kong airline, and there was more than 300 passengers on board. Most of them were American, Filipino, Australian. But you two, to the best of your knowledge, you were the only Canadian Filipino passengers. Was that a factor in the shenanigans beginning in terms of the boarding pass and the delay?
Yeah, I believe so because you know what, like as soon as we landed there, like we were waiting for us to get that boarding pass, and then they told us wait, and then when they were looking at our passport, they said, oh, you are a Canadian citizen. So we said yeah, and then where is your visa to go to the Philippines? I said no, we always go to the Philippines, we don't need a visa. And then they said no, you guys need a visa to go to the Philippines because where is the prove that you are Filipino. So we flip our passport and then we said this one, we were born in the Philippines. He said no, we need your birth certificate.
Okay.
And
And had you ever been asked this before when traveling? No?
first time. I used to live in Hong Kong for 1 year.
Okay.
I never had this problem. We used to pass there all the time.
Okay. And Liberty, you've been a veteran in the travel industry for more than 10 years. You know what's what. You know who's who in the zoo, so to speak. You know which documents to to bring along. So what do you think was really behind this decision to delay your departure to Manila and ultimately to deny it?
I have no idea. At first, we were just blindsided, right? But then in the end, we were like, I start looking and I said, like, we were the only two people there who had Canadian passports.
Yes.
And then everybody had like, US passport, they have like Australian passports and all kinds. And it's like, so we asked them, like, where you from? Like, we talk. Like Filipinos, they're very friendly.
Yes.
And so we asked them and they said, oh, from the US, I'm from Texas and all kinds, right? And then we said like, oh, okay, so we are the only two people like from Canada. There's other couple from Canada, but they have Philippine passport
Tourists.
because they were tourists. So that's fine, right? And then they asked all the information that we needed. Like they said, okay, do you have your quarantine hotel booking? So we said, yeah, we even have two separate rooms because they said, no, we're not allowed to stay in one room.
Okay.
So we had that. We have return ticket that they asked for. Did they ask us if we have the PTRC test? We said we did. Did you have your COVID vaccination? We showed them all. Everything that they've asked, it was there. And then they left us. They were talking, and then all of a sudden they come back. They said, do you have your birth certificate with you?
And as you said, Marcie, this is something you've never heard of. What do you think the real reason was to deny you the transfer onto Manila? At the time, the two Michaels were still incarcerated. The Wong Wei executive is still incarcerated in Vancouver, or I should say under house arrest. Was that what it was, that you were profiled as Canadians, and therefore they were going to make things difficult for you?
You know what? To think about it, yes, I think we were targeted. We feel like we were discriminated against because of what happened. We were like, why? Like, we provided everything that you asked for. Why you're not allowing us to go? And then they were blaming the Philippine government.
Really?
Yes, they said, "Oh no, it's the Philippine border agency that doesn't want." That's why. Then we started sending emails, right? I sent email to the Philippine consular agency, to the Canadian consular agency, but for some reason, only Philippine agency was able to give us some lights and saying that no, they are part of the Balikbayan program. They are allowed to go to the Philippines within 30 days with a valid return ticket, or to a maximum of 12 months to stay in the Philippines.
And meanwhile, this reluctance of the Philippine authorities that they're telling you exists, it didn't apply to the American Filipinos on the plane, the Australian Filipino. Only, what are the odds that the only two Canadian Filipino ladies are being denied a transit to the Philippines?
Exactly, yes. You know what is also very, scary is like they told us that we have to sit in one side of that place they give us, and then we have to wait until 6 o'clock, right, in the morning, until someone will come and take us, one immigration officer.
Wow.
So what is this for?
You
And
know,
then we
to
kind
me-
of start getting scared.
To me, this seems incredibly petty. It seems to me to be incredibly vindictive. It is the mandarins in Beijing just showing, how forceful they can be in terms of the diplomatic stage. I mean, those two Michaels language, like I said earlier, for over 1,000 days for absolutely no crime. It was a farce. Do you think that is really what happened? It was in a small way, the Chinese government saying, if you have a little maple leaf logo next to your name, expect things to be difficult for you.
Yeah, I see that now. I see that clearly now that yes, I was telling my sister at that point, I said, you know what, we are targeted because we have Canadian passport, right? But now when we came back and we kind of like have that chance to look at it, yes, we are, because we are carrying Canadian passports.
And Liberty, that's the key. When you came back here, you never got to the Philippines. They were adamant. Your mother, who's 91 years old, who lives here, she is still stuck in the Philippines. So you went all the way to Hong Kong, all the way back. And like you said, for no valid reason, where do you take this issue right now? Because you certainly want your mother to come home, don't you?
Absolutely. We really do want my mother to come home. The last thing that we want to do is for us to just sit here and wait, like, when can she come home, right? Like, she's getting older and older every single day. We also want to spend more time with her, right? And at the end of the day, where do we go from here?
Yeah. And, do you think now that the issue has been settled as of a week ago, the two Michaels are finally back on Canadian soil, if you and your sister Marcie were to get on a plane now and go to the Philippines with a stopover in Hong Kong, do you think you'd be allowed through, or do you think they would there'd still be this vindictiveness because you're Canadian not to let you get through to the Philippines?
The truth is, I don't think I want to step back in
Oh, is
that
that right?
airport again. I don't think so, because why would I want to repeat the same incident? If I could avoid it, I will avoid it. But at this point, I don't think it will change, because now they have our names there.
You know, that's a very good point. I mean, I was in Hong Kong in 1999. I loved it. I got to say, under the geopolitical situation now, I would never go back there. If they did a Google search of my name and they were to see some of the things I broadcast about, you know, the Chinese Communist Party, I don't think it would be safe for me. I think I could become a new version of the two Michaels. So maybe in a sense you got off easy. You didn't go to a prison on some kind of trumped up charges. But what are you going to do with your mother? She is still there, Marcie. I mean, she can't travel by herself. How is she going to get back?
Well, I'm not sure. This is the one that we're trying to work it out now, and we want, both sides of the governments, especially the federal governments. We don't want also that this one will happen to anybody.
Yeah.
How we, experience that, feeling is really hard.
You know, I don't know how to solve this problem. I share your concerns. I would never go back on Chinese soil ever. I just don't think this regime is trustworthy. Tell me something. 7 years ago, our prime minister, before he became the prime minister, said that the dictatorship in China, he has a basic admiration for it in terms of how they can get things done.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China, because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say we need to go green as fast as we need to start investing in solar.
Now listen, Liberty, you also said off camera that you reached out to your MP, who happens to be Ikra Khalid. And what did Miss Khalid do to help you out in your situation?
I just received an automated reply and saying that thank you very much for reaching out to us. We will get back to you. Who knows when?
And that was how many weeks ago?
It's now a week.
A week.
Yes.
Okay then.
So I decided maybe, you know what, maybe she's really busy. So I forwarded this email to Mr. Omar Al-Baraya.
Yeah, okay.
So I forwarded that email, and his office reached out and asked for our Canadian address. So I did.
And anything tangible done?
They just sent back that email yesterday, because I waited for Miss Khalid to reply, at least reach out to us, but we never get any response. So I said, you know what, maybe they were really that busy. So I forwarded it to the Parliament. And yesterday I got that email and asking us for our Canadian address, so I did responded.
All right. Well, I hope something can be done, but I got to tell you, I'm not optimistic. As we saw weeks ago, we let so many of our translators in Afghanistan and their families, we let them hung out to dry. We never brought them back, and they're facing potential death sentences there. Well, ladies, thank you for making time for me today. I hope you're able to settle this. As you said, your mother is only getting older. She's 91. She can't travel alone. I think this is just a terrible situation. And again, folks, as I mentioned, to me, this seems like these two ladies were discriminated against and treated in a petty and vindictive fashion simply for being Canadian citizens in light of the two Michaels situation that is now over. But still, would you trust the Mandarins in Beijing in terms of flying into China or Hong Kong? I sure wouldn't. At least these two ladies are not incarcerated. As to getting their mother back, well, hopefully there's a solution in the days ahead. Hopefully maybe somebody can go to bat for these ladies in terms of a diplomatic solution. But for now, this was just a rotten, despicable situation, but at least they're back home on Canadian soil. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Tell me, do you trust what the mainstream media is reporting? I sure don't. Therefore, if you can, please go to realreporters.ca. That's realreporters.ca. If you're able to, kindly make a donation so that Rebel News can continue to bring you the other side of the story.